Hello YouTube, Goddard Radio Moscow here again with another beer review for you, as is usual. So today I'm going to do my first beer review from the city of Frankfurt, and it's probably the best known brewery from Frankfurt if you like. It's a macro beer, but we're going to go with it anyway, and we'll have a little look at the Binding Brewery export beer. I actually thought this was the Roma Pils, so I was quite interested to try the export one as well, but I really would like to review the Roma Pils at some point, so hopefully I can get a hold of that one for you. It shouldn't be too difficult because in Heidelberg we're not too far away from Frankfurt, so hopefully I can get a hold of that one for you. But as is usual with my beer reviews, I'll take you through a brief history of the brewery, tell you a little bit about where the beer's from, but as I always say, if you just want to see the tasting, then just go on to the second part of the video. Now, the brewery was founded by Konrad Binding, who acquired his first brewery in the old town of Frankfurt in the year 1870, and he later moved the brewery to a new modern facility on Sachsenhausen Hill, and he converted the company into a corporation in the year 1884. Now, in 1919, Binding took control of the Homburg brewery, and then in 1921 they merged it with Hofbier Brauerei Schöfferhof from Mainz and also the Frankfurt Citizens Brewery to create the Schöfferhof Binding Regionalbrauerei AG. And AG is just a suffix in Germany for a company, if you like, almost like limited or incorporated in the UK and US respectively. Now, in 1939 the brewery produced their first batch of the famous Roma Pils, although soon after the brewery was actually destroyed in the Second World War. And it was odd because on the website it said 70% of the brewery was destroyed, and I'm not sure how they managed to calculate that figure, if you like, so I'd be interested to know that. So if any of you are watching and know how they calculated that, please let me know. But in 1953 the brewery ownership transferred to the Oetker Group, a very famous German food company, if you like, and they built the current brewery. And at the end of the decade, actually, it was in the 1950s that they did this. But this brewery, the aesthetics of this brewery, if you like, have become somewhat of a symbol for the company. It has huge glass windows, and behind it you can see 5 massive copper brewing kettles, and they're actually very, very proud of this sort of brewery frontage, if you like. But up until the year 1985, the malt house for this brewery was located opposite the brew house, and up until the 1970s the company was actually producing its own malts. But this large brick building that they were using for the malt house apparently dates back to the 19th century, with an extension in the 1950s. But the building actually has a large iron ventilation intake and it had Binding written on the side, and this thing would turn in the wind, so you could always tell the wind direction and know that you were near the Binding Brewery at the time. It's always good if you're on the way home and craving another beer, if you like. But the brewery actually celebrated its 125th anniversary in the year 1995, and they founded the Binding Cultural Foundation and then began the Binding Cultural Foundation Awards the following year in 1996. Now, in 2001 the brewery gained the distribution rights for the neighbouring brewery Henninger, and the company has thus been operating as part of the Radeberger Group. Sorry, it's a difficult one to actually say that, since 2002, and this also incorporates the Berliner Kind Brewery, and this group is actually apparently is the biggest brewery group in Germany. They've got an annual capacity of 13 million hectolitres, making it the largest brewery group in Germany. But today the brewery in Frankfurt has a 56,000 metres square premises in Frankfurt, and it employs 500 people apparently. The trademark of the brewery is in fact the Frankfurt Eagle here, which you can see on the Bundesliga team, the Eintracht Frankfurt, of course, and it is simply in the city crest of arms there, so you'll see this eagle around quite a lot in Germany. But the other beers from this brewery include, under the Binding label, they have the Roma Pils, the Export Privat, Adler Pils, the Kraft Malts, and also the Corolla Stoppelbock. Under the Klausthaler label, and this one seems to be an alcohol-free specialist one, they have the Classic, the Extra Herb, and the Radler. Then under the Henninger label you have the Export, Kaiser Pilsner, and also the Radler. Under the Schöfferhofer Weizen label, if you like, this one specialises in Hefeweizens, and it's actually quite easy to get these abroad. We can get them in Scotland. You have the Helles, the Dunkel, the Crystal, and also an alcohol-free one there. And they also produce a beer called Haberrecht Märzen. So hopefully I can get some of these and review them for you at a later stage, but that depends on how much time I have left in Germany. But just in addition to these ones, in fact, it's worth pointing out that since the 1960s the brewery have acquired many other breweries, and many of these breweries actually had economic and business problems. But Binding tended to shut down most of these breweries and take in their brewers and things like that. But two of these the brands that I mentioned earlier ago, Schöfferhofer and Klausthal, they produce beer with some of the recipes from these old breweries, And if you actually go and have a look at the German Wikipedia page that talks about the Binding Brauerei, you can actually go and see all the breweries that they've taken over and shut down over the years, and you can probably go into these websites there, and I'll put the Binding Brauerei website in the video description for you, so check it out. You can probably go in and see what happened to some of these other breweries as well. But let's get on to the tasting of this beer, and I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little look at the bottle, as I always usually do. It's quite a nicely presented one here. As I mentioned, here is the Frankfurt Eagle on the top here. There's a little outline of some of the buildings in the Frankfurt Altstadt there, or the old town as you would say. It says on the bottle, brewed in accordance with the German Reinheitsgebot, beer brewed in Frankfurt, and it says seit 1870. One thing I need to actually ask some of the German guys in my research group is why they say seit instead of Zukunft. I thought Zukunft was established, but maybe it's a more formal word or something. I need to ask them about that. You can see there's the sort of top label, if you like, there, quite a nice foil one, and here is the bottle cap for this one. As you can see, unique to this particular beer, Binding Export, and it's quite a nicely presented bottle, I have to say, with this one. So this guy is a 5.3% Dortmunder Helles beer. You should expect a bit of a malt accent to this. It's a sort of variant of the Helles beer, if you like. But let's get this guy open and get on with the tasting here. And as I mentioned, 5.3% Dortmunder Helles beer. You can see a nice smoky opening there on the bottle, so let's get this guy poured. As you would expect from a sort of macro beer, seems to be a very sort of rich, pale, straw golden colour. As is typical with the German beers, you're getting a good bit of head on this guy. Germans really want a big frothy head on their beers, and it's something in Britain. A lot of people don't like heads on the beers that come out of the taps and stuff like that. I guess the Germans are maybe a bit more cultured in their beer drinking than British people are, but who knows? You can't blame them for that with the quality of beer that they produce, I guess. So as you can see, as I was mentioning, it's a really rich straw golden colour. If I put my fingers in front of it, I can see through it despite the sort of dimples in the glass, if you like. There's a lot of carbonation moving up to the top of the beer there. You had a bit of a finger of white bumpy head in this case. It wasn't really a frothy head, and that's dissipating quite quickly. That's unusual for a German beer, for the head to dissipate so quickly, and even with the macro beers, German beer, the head doesn't really normally dissipate this quickly, but there's a lot of carbonation coming up to the top of this one here. So in terms of the aroma, malty grains, there's a lot of grassy hop in there, as you would expect. There's actually quite a bit of fruit to this one, but you are smelling the malt. In fact, it does have an underlying sort of brown sugar character, which is what you would expect from the Dortmund Helles style beer. But it's a sort of caramel and citrus actually is the main aroma from this one, which is quite surprising. It's a very mild aroma. You can't sit up here and really smell it very much, but you have to stick your nose right into it. But yeah, actually quite a brown sugar and caramel aroma here. Some grassy hop as well. Actually has a smell of sweetness about it. So it is quite a malty aroma, this guy. But you're picking up some grains as well, and there maybe is some floral character, but the most prominent thing I would say in the aroma is the caramel malts in the background there, and probably some citrus as well. You can pick up a little sharpness, but that's probably mixing with the grassy hop in fact. So without further ado, let's give this guy a taste and see how we get on. It's actually a fairly smooth one. This is quite unusual. I've not tried a macro beer that has this kind of feel to it. Yeah, the carbonation on this guy, that's the first thing that's getting me. The carbonation is very smooth. It's unusual. It's going to the top of the mouth and then smoothing out instead of going onto the tongue and smoothing out. That's quite unusual in fact, but the taste that you're getting first is definitely the sort of sweet malts coming up front. Quite some brown sugar malts there in the malt base, but you've actually got a bit of grain sitting in front of that, definitely. It's not really got a very kind of prominent flavour, if you like, though. It is actually kind of quite cardboardy, if you like. It's definitely a sort of caramel malt in the background with some grains on top, but it does have a sort of cardboardy feel to it, the malt base. The hop finish is actually very mild. This is the thing as well. This beer is very mild. It follows the aroma in that sense that it's not very pungent at all. But it's a very, very mild beer. There is just a little bit of a sort of doughy feel once you get past the caramel on this one. There is a little bit of dough to the malt base as well. And that's probably the most complex thing about this beer, but it really isn't a very it doesn't have much of a taste to it, this beer. In fact, actually, it's very cardboardy, very caramelly, and the hops that are coming out after it are slightly grassy. There's not really a fruit flavour to it like I was picking up in the Aroma. It's definitely a mainly malty beer, this one, but maybe that's what you would expect from the Helles. But I always like a little bit of a hoppy bite after you get past the nice malt base with the Helles beer. Yeah, there's not even really a weak citrus note or anything to it. Definitely more of a malty beer. But the malt base in it, like I say, brown sugar in the background, some grains at the top, and it has a cardboardy feel to it, in fact. So yeah, I guess in a way it fits the Dortmund Helles style, that it's a more malt forward beer, but it's not one of the best in the category that I've tried, I have to say. In terms of the mouthfeel, it's light bodied. The carbonation is medium. Like I said, it has that weird characteristic about it where it goes to the top of the mouth and smooth out, so it's quite unusual and unique in that way. This one's it's a good thirst quencher, if you like, and if you want something that's a bit malty and it's a bit of a thirst quencher, then maybe this is one for you to look at. And it has a slightly bitter finish as well. It's not really dry, it's more of an oily mouthfeel, this one, I would say. But yeah, it's unusual in that sense. It's not the best example of a Helles beer. It's certainly not as good as the stuff you get in the small breweries, of course, but these things are designed for mass consumption, so they sort of take a few things out and stuff like that. So that's what you would expect with a macro beer versus a craft beer, of course. But hopefully you found this beer review informative for you. Overall, I would say it's not one of the better industrial beers that I've had in Germany. I've said in quite a few of my reviews that the Germans are the masters of the industrial beer process. They're the ones who produce the best beers, although you could probably say the Czechs actually do them quite well as well. So I wouldn't say this is one of the better German industrial beers. It's a fairly decent thirst quencher if you want something that's a little bit more malty. So in that category, something that's a little bit more malty and a good thirst quencher. If you're in Frankfurt, you know, give it a try and see what you think of it. But I actually would have preferred to have the Roma Pils for the review, if you like. That probably would have been a more interesting one, and it's a more well-known beer, if you like. But this guy, you know, if you do want a thirst quencher that's a little bit more malty, then give it a try. But if you have tried this beer yourself, please let me know in the comments section your own thoughts on this, and please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I hope you found the beer review informative, and I'll be back soon with another one. But thanks again for your support, or your continued support, over my beer review videos. Cheers.